And now, the Rink Rap podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
What's up, Blue Shirt faithful? I am Jim Cerny. This is the Rink Rap podcast at Forever Blueshirts. Thanks for joining us, even as you're already in mourning for the 2025-26 season, because I was scouring X this morning, social media, my notifications, and I would say there's a vast majority of you out there that have thrown up your hands and given up on the 25-26 season already. The centennial season. Come on. The centennial season of New York Rangers hockey. And after one game, a loss, 3-0, opening night, Madison Square Garden against the Pittsburgh Penguins. After one game, so many of you are cashing in your chips already. That is how deep the PTSD from last season, from last year's miserable, disappointing, disgusting, whatever D word I can come up with again, season it was. I get it. PTSD. You're carrying it. We talked about this a few weeks ago, right? I get it. You're feeling it. So you see a disjointed effort, you see a loss, you see a shutout loss on home ice to a team that you're supposed to be much, much better than. A divisional opponent. Oh, your new coach making his debut against his former team. Not a lot inspired the New York Rangers on Tuesday night at Madison Square Garden. There wasn't a lot to be inspired by if you're part of the Blue Shirt faithful. I get it. And I hate cliches and I hate excuses. But listen, the most often used phrase in the post-game Rangers locker room on Tuesday night was, "It is just one game." The coach said it. Wasn't happy. He laid out the things he was not happy about in the game. But he said, at the end of the day, it's just one game. I'm paraphrasing. But at the end of the day, it's just one game. 1 out of 82. Adam Fox said it. Mika Zibanejad said it. JT Miller, the new captain, said it 3 times by my count post-game. That was the default. It's just one game. And they're right. Can't argue that. It is 1 out of 82. But I get it. You Ranger fans, maybe even Ranger players as well in that locker room. You know, you're just waiting for the next shoe to fall after the disaster of last season, the dysfunction of last season. You're expecting bad things to happen. And you know what? Listen, I get it. There's a long history of this misery, right? With the New York Rangers fans and the organization and their history. I get it. Talking about centennial, 100 years. How many Stanley Cup championships in the first 99? That's right. 4. 1 since 1994. 1, actually, since 1940. And they won it in 1994. Oh, you may have heard about that season. There have been trips to the Eastern Conference Final, including this core group taking them to 2 Eastern Conference Final runs in the past 4 seasons. That core is getting a little bit older. You don't trust the core anymore, do you? Not after last season. Not after the way they wilted in the 24 Eastern Conference Final against the Panthers. Right? You want to hope. You want to believe. You want to believe that Mike Sullivan can turn things around, that there will be the first-year coaching bump that we saw under Gerard Gallant, that we saw under Peter Laviolette. You expect it under Mike Sullivan, 2-time Stanley Cup winner, a guy that's coaching the United States at the Winter Olympics. Really a proven guy, a guy that gets it. Great communicator. Again, something we talked about on previous episodes of Rink Rap. Really good communicator. I think he's doing all the right things to set the Rangers up. Different play style, focus on north-south. And let's not be so fancy. Let's get after it. Let's work hard. Let's go get that puck. Defensively, Let's switch it up. The man on man didn't work. Didn't work under Peter Laviolette, though he stuck with it. 82 games of sticking with it last year. Now, Mike Sullivan's going to change up the defensive structure as well. Has. It all kind of takes time, though, to gel. So you want to believe. And then you get to opening night and you allow yourself to be fired up, especially if you were inside the Garden. Welcoming some new faces, welcoming back some old ones, getting behind this team, looking for a W, at least a well-played effort on opening night. And instead, you get this clunker. Rangers couldn't look more disjointed than they did in the opener on Tuesday. They generated very little offense. They allowed the Penguins to dictate how this game was played. The Penguins owned the puck, both ends of the ice, basically from the dots down behind the goal line. The Penguins did a terrific job getting to the front of Igor Shesterkin's net for prime scoring chances. I know the high danger chances, according to Natural Stat Trick, weren't that heavily favored, that skewed towards Pittsburgh. But the eye test tells you different. Who had the better scoring chances? And in the best scoring positions, the Penguins did. Penguins kept turning the Rangers over in neutral zone as well. Rangers couldn't sustain pressure in the offensive zone. How reminiscent of last year was that? There were some bursts. There were some nice stretches, especially the second period. Couldn't sustain it. Right? Couldn't carry one shift to another. Whereas I thought the Penguins did. The Penguins look like the better coached team. How ironic is that? Former Ranger assistant Dan Muse, now the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And the Rangers have the two-time Stanley Cup winner, the guy Chris Drury's wanted all along. But I'm not going to go that far. I know I said it. I know the Penguins looked really, really good. And that's everybody, top to bottom. The Sidney Crosbys, the Evgeny Malkins, the Chris Letang's, the Erik Karlssons. Yeah, you expect them to be really good. They were, I thought, even though the Rangers neutralized Crosby pretty well. But that group, the best players, they were good. But boy, their kids were really good. Rookies playing their first games. They had an 18-year-old in the lineup, a 19-year-old in the lineup. They stuck to it. They stuck to their system. I thought they dictated how the game was played. It's pretty much a perfect road game that the Penguins played. And Arthur Shilovs was good when called upon in goal. 25 save shutout. His first shutout in the NHL in his Penguins debut. Looking like a pretty good pickup from the Vancouver Canucks. I actually like that pickup by them, that acquisition in the offseason. Didn't expect this on opening night. In fact, I didn't expect him to even be in the lineup. I thought he'd be the backup goalie. Thought Tristan Jarry, just based on his history, albeit a checkered one, certainly checkered last season, thought he'd be the starter. But no, Shilovs gets the start. Listen, he was good. He made some really good saves. Controlled his rebounds. Looked good. But Penguins played well in front of him. Rangers, though, didn't make him work a lot. Zibanejad talked about it after the game, where he was referencing how the Rangers didn't have a lot of second chance opportunities. Back, their best scoring opportunities came off the stick of Zibanejad. In fact, he almost tied the game off a crazy scramble with about 5 minutes to go in the third period when they were only down 1-0. And that's the other thing about this, too. Listen, get off the bridge, get off the ledge, whatever floor you are in your apartment building or office building or whatever. Come on back in. Get off the ledge, okay? Again, disjointed is the word that I use. As out of sync as the Rangers looked. Again, it's only one game. But again, as disappointed as you were in their overall play on Tuesday night, here's the bottom line. They were down 1-0 because, as they've done throughout his entire stay here in New York, They relied on Igor Shesterkin to be Igor Shesterkin, and Igor Shesterkin was Igor Shesterkin. He was terrific. He was beaten once on a breakdown in front. We can really analyze it. But Justin Brazeau, I mean, how wide open could he have been after that face-off win by Evgeny Malkin in the offensive zone? Rangers converge on Malkin. Vinny Trocheck gets tied up. Here comes Eero Vakanainen. Alexis Lafreniere, who's supposed to be covering the slot, doesn't quite slide back in time. Brazeau is wide open, forehand, backhand, back of the net. That's the only goal that was scored against Igor Shesterkin. A couple empty netters at the end, put this one away. And you know what? That pissed off Sully too, because that was a staple of the Rangers last season too, right? Not getting it done when you pull your goalie, not being able to come back in the third period, giving up those empty net goals so that the other team ices games. He didn't think the Rangers were desperate enough on either empty net goal to win puck battles. Ended up costing him. 1-0 becomes 3-0 in under 30 seconds. And that was it. That was opening night for you. So listen, a lot of ground for the Rangers to, build up here, to build from. Wasn't a great start. Now, I know I pissed off some people myself because I wrote both in my takeaways column after the game and also another column on Wednesday morning. I referenced that there are some baked in excuses for the Rangers. Their whole preseason felt disjointed. Here they are trying to, incorporate a new system, new style of play, different mindset, really, right? Under Mike Sullivan. But they didn't have their full lineup ever in a preseason game. You expect that early on. And you give the kids a lot of chances. Guys that are going to start the season in the minors. You give them a look or two. I understand that. But usually your last couple preseason games, you've got the whole group together. The Rangers never had that. They practiced together in training camp, though not a lot. But those 18 skaters that dressed, and by the way, dressed in those smoking Centennial jerseys. We'll touch on that too. But the 18 that dressed on Tuesday night hadn't played a single game together. Now, a lot of them had been teammates before with the Rangers, of course. But yet, new system, still working out chemistry, things like that. There's kind of a reason why they look disjointed and out of sync. Listen, Artemi Panarin missed the entire preseason. He is your most valuable and your greatest offensive threat. He missed the entire preseason because of injury, 2 injuries. And he stayed on the perimeter. He played 20-odd minutes last night. So he looked healthy, but he stayed on the perimeter. Just seemed off. JT Miller admitted it as such after the game that he didn't feel right. He didn't feel good out there. Now, he only played 1 preseason game after sustaining, that lower body injury late in training camp. So he only played in 1 preseason game. So he's still finding his way, trying to build chemistry. It's him and Zibanejad who played together last year. But now they have Will Cooley on the left side. Just everything seemed out of rhythm. And the chemistry wasn't quite there. So again, there's some excuses for that. Give the Rangers a little bit of breathing room here. On that it wasn't so great. The effort, again, it's hard to question an athlete's effort by sitting up in the press box or in the stands or watching on TV. Last year was easy to do that because you could flat out see the body language, the terrible body language, and often, really mediocre effort that the Rangers put into games. I don't think that was the case last night, Tuesday night. I do believe that they're still figuring it out. and I forgot who it was. Might have been Sullivan, maybe it was Zibanejad, said that it's got to become instinctual, playing a new style or playing with new line mates or a new defense partner, whatever. And certainly this applies to Adam Fox and Vladislav Gavrikov, who were not at their best in the opener. But you find that rhythm over time. You build that. And I think that's what we saw a lot of with the Rangers on Tuesday night. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Listen, if this trend continues, that's going to further erode their confidence, your confidence in them, right? But there were some good things from Tuesday night as well. And you know what? Wait, let me digress for a moment. Raise your hand, or both hands, as I'm doing right now, okay? Raise your hands if you've got the triple play of PTSD. You're a Rangers fan, you're a Mets fan, you're a Jets fan. How many of you are out there? Counting. Yeah, I'm one. I grew up one, lifelong. My son is one as well. Ooh, it's not easy, right? Not easy. Not easy. Last year's Rangers season, disaster, as I called it, dysfunction, dismal. Segued into the Mets season, one of the most disappointing finishes in franchise history. And then, there's the Jets, who are the Jets. Continue to jet up. Oof. Okay, sorry about the digression. Let's go to the few positives that I saw out of Tuesday night. And again, I had it in my takeaways. I like the effort. I like the engagement. And I like the play of Mika Zibanejad and Alexis Lafreniere, two of the most important Rangers heading into this season, coming off down seasons, needing to kind of put the luster back on the shine that used to be who they were with the New York Rangers. First impressions were pretty good. Not perfect. We talked about Lafreniere, not getting to Brezzo before he had time to one-on-one beat Igor Shesterkin on the only goal scored against a goalie in the season opener. Laf was engaged. I thought he was physical right from the get-go. I liked the way he came back. I saw him behind the Rangers net. It was 1 against 2. He was there against a couple Penguin players. He knocked one down, knocked him off the puck, then chased after the puck, bodied the next man into the wall. That was in the defensive zone behind his own net. Now, somebody might argue, well, wait a minute, wasn't he out of position? Well, no. Yeah. At least he was in the defensive zone, and he was hitting, and he was winning a puck battle. Those are pretty good things. He was engaged offensively, 6 shots on goal. He had 6 shot attempts. Each one was on net, including their first one. Good rising snapshot late on their first power play in the first period, where he snapped it up high. Shelov's made the blocker save. But liked what I saw from Lafreniere. Engaged. Ditto for Mika Zibanejad. Same day that I published a story at Forever Blueshirts with my opinion that I think he's the Rangers' X factor this season. Not a bottom 6 forward that can spark the team, not Jonathan Quick, being the X factor where he gets back to the level of play from 2 seasons ago where you could really say, boy, he and Igor are the best goalie tandem in the NHL. I mean, those things are all important, and contributions from the kids and, Will Cooley's development, Alexis Lafreniere's development, all those things are important for sure. Good health, Adam Fox rebounds. The X factor on this team is Mika Zibanejad. When he's going good and he's feeling it, he's got a swagger about him. And these players feed off that. Like it or not, and I know a lot of Ranger fans are down on him, and I was super down on him last season. Like it or not, Mika Zibanejad is a leader on this team. Guys look to him. He's been a star player in this league. He's been a star player in this organization for a long time. He's now the longest tenured current Rangers player. now that Chris Kreider was traded away. So when he's going good, guys feed off that. They feed off of it because he can do crazy things on the ice. Crazy, great things. He makes players around him better when he's at his best, when he's going, when he's confident, when he's on top of his game. But the flip side is true too. When it went south last year for him, on and off the ice, he carried a lot of baggage onto the ice, a lot of being upset with the organization, a lot of woe is us, that terrible, terrible body language that he carried with him out onto the ice, questionable effort on a continual basis, and of course, the lack of production. You don't think those teammates that look up to him kind of followed suit? I don't think it's a coincidence. So he's the Rangers' X factor. And to see him come out engaged in both ends of the ice, again, he led the team with 7 shots on goal. He had their best scoring opportunities, including that one late in the game where he scrambled in front. He ended up chipping it over the net. But he had some other good opportunities too. Great anticipation, picking off an Erik Karlsson pass, zooming in, wiring a shot on net. Like that was great. Mika full stride and full speed, creating, anticipating, making plays at both ends. But what I really loved, where I said, well, man, he's come to play tonight, was in the first period. Gavrikov, the defenseman, gets caught deep in the offensive zone. Here come the Penguins the other way. I think it was odd man 3-on-2. Wasn't a wide open 3-on-2. Somebody else was on his way back, but Fox was the only defenseman back. Who comes back to make a play in the defensive zone, all the way back in his own end, playing a 200-foot game, was Mika Zibanejad. Players will feed off that. Players will feed off of how he played offensively on Tuesday night. And they will especially feed off of if he carries himself with that swagger and confidence and feels good about being out there. We didn't see that last year. As such, we saw the Rangers hit the skids last season. So those were 2 good things to see. Obviously, Shesterkin was terrific, stopped 27 of 28 shots. He was the difference in the game. He was the best player in the game in my book. I know Bruzeau had 2 goals. I know that Shelov's had the 25 save shutout and was very good. The best player on the ice was Igor. That bodes well for the Rangers. And the other thing, I like the play of the rookie, Noah Laba, NHL debut. He was noticeable, right? He's out there. He's buzzing. He's puck hunting. I love it. Gets in on the forecheck. He gets back defensively. Won 5 of 7 faceoffs. Liked what I saw from Noah Laba. And I'm not seeing it through rose-colored glasses. I wanted to see that. I wanted to be happy about Noah Laba's NHL debut. But I think I see it objectively. Again, wasn't spectacular. That was a pretty good NHL debut for Noah Laba. That bodes well as well. And I love the fact, and we'll get to this in the next segment, I love the fact that Mike Sullivan allowed himself to pick Noah Laba for the final roster spot. You were beginning to wonder, Brennan Othman gets cut, Gabe Perreault gets cut, Scott Morrow gets cut, Brett Berard gets cut, right? You're like, I guess it's going to be Juuso Parssinen on opening night at 3C. It wasn't. It was Noah Laba. I mean, Sullivan comes in with an open mind. I like it. We'll talk more about what's ahead for the Rangers, do a little season preview, some of their roster decisions. We'll talk about that next. You are tuned in to the Rink Rap podcast here at Forever Blue Shirts. Welcome back to the Rink Rap podcast here at Forever Blue Shirts. I am Jim Cerny. You can follow me on X. You see right there at Jim Cerny. And of course, catch all my articles and all of our articles from our staff at foreverblueshirts.com. And to that end, a couple things I want to plug. One is we have a new features writer this year. I know she's very, very popular. out on social media. Ranger fans know her. They really love her. And now they're getting to know her work as well. She is a very, very talented journalist, Jennifer O'Regan. And Jen has done 2 stories for us so far. And they're not your typical, hockey analysis stories or game stories or news angles or what's next or what did this former Ranger do or anything like that. Instead, she really got deep insight into how Brett Berard became an NHL player, his path to becoming an NHL player by having long conversations with his family. And she produced just an outstanding story about Brett last week on foreverblueshirts.com. And this week, she did a similar story. Obviously, everybody's background is different, so it's a different story, but a similar vein, getting to know Will Borgen and his journey to the NHL and ultimately to the New York Rangers, getting a lot of great insight and anecdotes from his father, Bill Borgen. And another thing I love with her stories, above and beyond the fact that she is a hell of a writer, a beautiful writer, actually, a poetic writer, are the photos. She gets these families to send her these great photos, from the photo albums, digital, copied, photographs, real photographs, all of it. They're really good reads, really good looks, and it's a pleasure to welcome her to the Forever Blue Shirt staff and family. And that leads into, we did our predictions in our season preview story the other day on Forever Blue Shirts. So make sure to check that out. And we'll get to the staff predictions, my predictions, looking ahead to the season. But in looking ahead, in writing a preview of this 25-26 season for the Rangers, their 100th year in the National Hockey League, a couple things stood out. Putting together the roster. I talked about Mike Sullivan having an open mind, keeping Noah Laba not only on the roster, but as the third line center to open up the season. I also liked the run, the long look that he gave Gabe Perreault and Scott Morrow in particular, Brendan Othman a little bit to a lesser extent in preseason. Gave these guys a really long look, the kids, the best prospects in the organization, the ones closest to being NHL ready. And even though they're starting in the minors, Othman, Perreault, Berard, also in that mix, Morrow, you get the feeling that the coach knows what he has, and he won't be afraid to go to those kids, pull them up from the minor leagues at points during the season. I am absolutely convinced Gabe Perreault is going to play a role on the team this year. I believe Scott Morrow is going to be called up at some point as well, especially if there's power play issues. He'd be a pretty nice PP2 quarterback. Brendan Othman, if they need some size, and especially if he gets his confidence going, he's still, to me, it's a pretty nice fit as a third line wing. None of these guys are ruled out. I'm not saying other coaches would rule them out, but they're definitely not ruled out under Mike Sullivan. I like that. And I like the communication, letting these kids know, well, here's what you need to work. Go work on these things. Go play 20 minutes a night at Hartford. By the way, Hartford's a destination this year, right? Like, if you're a real Rangers fan, you got to get up to Hartford and see some games, or, get the AHL TV package, order that up. You got to be watching this team. That's not just the future of the Rangers. Not only are there several of their top prospects there, but that could be your immediate future as well. Could be the present. I don't think we've seen the last of Brett Berard. And by the way, if Jennifer O'Regan is watching, I'm sorry. I know she was heartbroken that Brett Berard did not make this team, did not make the final roster. And, the argument can be made, and here's another thing with rosters, right? when the Rangers signed Conor Sheary to a PTO, I said, that's fine. If he goes out and he earns a spot on this roster in training camp, great. But if he's just Mike Sullivan's, buddy, we won a couple Stanley Cup championships together. I have more faith in him as, 33 years old and, X amount of games in the NHL and, a couple rings than I do, in the place of one of the kids getting an opportunity. Then I was going to have big problems with that decision, with bringing Sheary, even bringing him in. But I thought it would be good. I thought it would create more competition. It was another player that could carry the message, or it was a player that could carry Sully's message inside the locker room, which I thought was important as he transitioned into his first season as head coach of the Rangers. I thought that was important in training camp and preseason. Then Sheary goes out, and he's one of your best players in the preseason. Dog on a bone. That's what Sully calls him. The way he chases after the puck, his puck pursuit. But did it come at the expense of Brett Berard? I always felt, for the couple weeks of preseason games and throughout training camp, I really felt like Berard was the odd man out all along. I know he was in the final cuts. And he was the last player sent back to Hartford before the season began. So maybe coach knows what he has in Berard, but I just never felt that Berard was really in the mix. As I was watching it unfold, the battle for, a roster spot. And I get it. I know part of it, and same thing with Perreault and Hoffman. You can send them up and down. They're, they don't have to go pass through waivers like a Juuso Parssinen would, for example. Or Johnny Brodzinski. So I understand that aspect of it. But is Sheary at 33 with his experience a better option than 23-year-old Brett Berard, who's only played 35 games in the NHL? But they're similar players. Dog on a bone. Good skaters. Berard's faster, but good skaters. Some offensive skill, can play up the lineup if you need them to on occasion. Better suited for a third line role. Diligent, scrappy. They're very similar. Brett Berard's 10 years younger. And he's one of your guys that you drafted and developed. I waver on where I stand about that. Again, I referenced Jennifer O'Regan. I know that she would love for Brett Berard to have won that spot and maybe given more of an opportunity to win that spot. But Sheary gets it. 1 year, 2-way contract. Here's the thing. And here's why I'm okay in the bigger picture with Conor Sheary being here. Again, it's a guy with 2 Stanley Cup rings. That's a plus. Again, he can carry Sully's message as we talk about this disjointed group coming together, building chemistry, understanding what it is the coach wants, the way he wants the players to play. Sheary can carry that message. That's important. He's an energy guy. So that's positive too. Having his experience, especially if you're going to have Noah Laba be your third line center, having his experience on the wing, playing alongside a 22-year-old rookie, that's a plus too. In the big picture, though, here's the biggest plus. It's not going to hurt the Rangers if at some point, November, February, somewhere in between, they decide, okay, we got what we needed out of Conor Sheary. Brett Berard's playing great. He's lighting it up in the minors. Brendan Othman's lighting it up in the minors. Gabe Perreault, whatever. We could get more juice out of one of our younger guys by bringing him up now. And if you send Sheary down to the minors, expose him to waivers, so be it. It's okay. I don't know that it would be a massive loss. So in the big picture, starting the season with him, but likely not concluding the season with him in the Stanley Cup playoffs, where I do believe the Rangers will be, not having him be on your third line, either he's your extra forward or he clears waivers and goes down to Hartford. That's where I see this all playing out. It's like buying time. He's like a safety net and serving, as I broke down for you there, purpose to begin the season. Mike Sullivan's first season as head coach. So that's why I'm okay that Conor Sheary is here. Plus the fact, listen, he played really well in the preseason. I don't know, how long or how big an impact he'll make in the regular season on the ice. He was okay against the Penguins. His effort was there. I'm not sure about much else. Did have that one good, the 2-on-1, with the centering feed down low. So that, they did have that from him. He did get ragdolled, by the way, by Evgeny Malkin, who just absolutely tossed him aside. Remember, Sheary is 5'8". So is Brett Berard, 5'9", whatever. But he was ragdolled by Malkin. So that stands out, right? In any case, so that's a big part of how the Rangers are constructed. The rest of their roster is the rest of their roster. As soon as you eliminated the kids and said, oh, they're going to begin the season in the minors, then, it just all fell together. You knew that Susie and Borgen were going to be a pair. Vakanainen and Schneider would be a pair as well. Fox and Gavrikov, we already knew were, you knew who your fourth line was. Now you piece together your third line. Your top six was in place once everybody got healthy. We finally got Panarin back, finally got JT back. And there you go. Listen, there's a decent amount of talent on this roster, but it's a very top-heavy lineup. And you saw it. If your top six, and toss in Adam Fox from the blue line, if they're not producing points or they don't score, it's going to be tough for the Rangers to put up points. They're going to have to be really good defensively. And they weren't great defensively on Tuesday night. But I think in the big picture, I do like where they're headed. I think we'll see changes as the season moves along. I think they'll be in the mix before the trade deadline, and they'll do some adding there as well. Of course, if you were looking ahead to next season, say, this season, whatever happens, because, next offseason, there's going to be Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel or Kyle Connor or Kaprizov. Oh, guess what? Not surprisingly, all four of those unrestricted free agents are now under contract with the current teams long-term. McDavid for another 2 years past this one, but everybody else long-term, as they signed each of those top pending UFAs are no longer pending UFAs because they signed contract extensions with their teams. So if you're looking forward to that, it doesn't matter about this year. We're going to make the big splash next off season. Well, we'll get to that as well. So predictions. Where are the Rangers headed? It's not all bad. It's not all great. It's somewhere in the middle. I do not believe that they're a top Stanley Cup contender. Anything can happen. We've seen it in the NHL. When you've got a goalie like Igor Shesterkin, you got a chance. Like, get in the dance and got a chance if you've got Igor in net. I have them finishing third in the division because, unlike many others, I don't think the Metro is great as a division. I like the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Devils are maybe a notch better than the Rangers. I see the Capitals coming back to the pack. I see Columbus falling backwards. Like, they made such a huge stride last year, big strides last year. I'm not sure I see it this season. I see them taking a step back Pittsburgh, Philly. I think they're, below the Rangers. I see the Rangers finishing third in the Metro. I'm not saying it's going to be a great season. It's going to be better than last year. I don't think we'll see the dysfunction we saw last year. And at the end of the day, as bad as it was, as hellish as it was last season, a couple wins down the stretch, the Rangers are right there as a playoff team, as a wild card team. There's not going to be that much dysfunction this year. Again, we can't predict injuries and all that. See them third place in the Metro. I see them knocking off the Devils in the first round. And then I see the Rangers losing in round 2. I know it's Carolina. I know the Rangers have their number in the playoffs. This time, I think Carolina gets them. And that's the springboard to take them into the Stanley Cup final, where I think Carolina is going to lose. I think this is the year that the Dallas Stars get over the hump, make it to the Cup final, and actually win the Stanley Cup. I will not rule out the Edmonton Oilers because I really think Connor McDavid's will be the Hart Trophy winner this season. He is so hell-bent on winning the Cup after coming so close 2 years in a row. Doing everything in his power on and off the ice, taking less money. Because he wants it there. He wants it spent on other guys. He wants to keep this team together. He wants the Oilers to add what they need to add. Wants them to be able to afford it. He wants to win. And come on. This guy's will, combine it with his skill. He stays healthy. Leon Draisaitl stays healthy. The Oilers are going to be back in the mix again. But I've got the Stars beating the Hurricanes in the Stanley Cup final. And we'll take a deeper dive into a full season preview outside of the New York Rangers next week as well, because Ryan Paton from NHL Network Radio is going to be our guest. And we'll certainly talk a ton of Rangers, but we'll take a bigger look, a macro look at the league as well, and what we expect to see and what we've seen in the first week of the season by the time he joins us next week. So Ryan Paton will be with us. Make sure to check out our staff predictions at foreverblueshirts.com. It's part of our season preview. Give you a spoiler alert. All but one staff member believes the Rangers will make the Stanley Cup playoffs this season. One does not. I won't let you know who it is. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back with our third segment in a bit. This is Rink Rap at Forever Blue Shirts. Welcome back to the Rink Rap podcast here at Forever Blue Shirts. I am Jim Cerny. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Thanks also for following me on X at Jim Cerny, following the entire team and Forever Blue Shirts at Forever Blue Shirts. And of course, heading to the website, foreverblueshirts.com. As I just mentioned before, Ryan Paton will be our guest next week. He's from NHL Network Radio. We'll talk all things Rangers and get into a whole other host of topics as well from in and around the National Hockey League. One of the things that he and I'm telling you right now, we're going to discuss, touched on it a little bit before about Connor McDavid taking less money, stay in Edmonton, Kirill Kaprizov getting a record-setting contract, the highest AAV in the NHL. Kyle Connor, his massive contract, what all that means for the Rangers next off season, and what does it mean about their ongoing relationship with Artemi Panarin, who's a pending unrestricted free agent next summer. So we'll get into all that next week. Speaking of spinning ahead, the Rangers opened the 25-26 season. We talked about the loss on opening night, but they play 8 games in 14 nights to open up the season. That's a pretty serious stretch, a pretty serious test. And we're going to see this throughout the season this year because of that long break for the Olympics in February when the league will shut down for a few weeks. So we get our first taste of it, and it's right out of the hopper. First 8 games of the season come in a 14-day span. And, you got some Metro Division opponents in there. You've got, it's to be honest, it's a little bit of a soft start, even though they already lost to the Penguins. Your first 3 games are, Pittsburgh at home at the Garden, then a road game in Buffalo, and then a return visit or return match against the Penguins in Pittsburgh on Saturday before coming right back for your first back-to-back of the season, Sunday at the Garden against Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals, which, by the way, that of the first week of the season, that's the game I am most dialed in on. Absolutely dialed in on, because I am so curious, as curious as I am about where the Rangers are headed and who they are this season, what they'll be, what they can be, how they'll, hopefully for their case, put last season behind them and turn the page, and new coach, new captain, the whole new vibe, if they can carry all that forward. As much as I'm, interested and intrigued by that, of course, I'm equally so about the Washington Capitals, because I'm not sold on them winning the division again. A lot went right. And listen, they did a great job putting that team together. And I loved Spencer Carberry as coach. And I did 2 years ago when he was a rookie coach in the NHL and they barely scraped into the playoffs. So it's not just recency bias. Love Spencer Carberry. I'm just not feeling it with them. Maybe if I was around them every day and, got a better sense of where they're at, who they are. But from an outsider's point of view, I'm not sure I feel the Capitals as one of the 2 best teams, let's say, in the division this year. I can see them and the Rangers battling for 3rd place in the Metro. In any case, we get our first look at the Capitals in a division matchup Sunday, Madison Square Garden. That's the game I'm looking forward to the most out of the first week of the season. And then, hey, later as you go into the second and third weeks, you get Connor McDavid twice. You get the Edmonton Oilers twice. Right? You get him here at the Garden. You get him on the road in Edmonton, part of that road trip at the end of October. Looking forward to that. But I know there's still some Ranger fans out there still envisioning Connor in the red, white, and blue. Still could happen. He only signed a 2-year extension. So, you have this season, then the extension kicks in. So 2028 might still have your crack at him, Ranger fans. I know there's a lot of dreaming going on, a lot of hope and wishing. Okay, it's not happening next summer. We know that. 2028? Maybe, right? Maybe. So in any case, 1 game into the season, take a deep breath, as we said at the beginning. We're going to be here with you throughout the entire ride of the Rangers Centennial season. And speaking of Centennial, before I sign off, those Centennial jerseys, I thought they looked good. The sweaters, when they, released what they're going to look like. And, we even saw players modeling them and everything. But to see it on the ice in a game, Madison Square Garden, all 18 skaters, 2 goalies, the entire team wearing those sweaters, fire. I love the Centennial jerseys. And I'm not a big 3rd jersey guy. Like, they are what they are. You get a different one for an outdoor game. You get one just to have one, whatever. 3rd jerseys, they don't move me one way or the other. I really, really like these. I love that color, that lighter blue. Funny thing with that, somebody tweets at me today in my notifications. I see, they're terrible. It looks like the Nordiques. Yeah, they're like the Nordiques. Those are great jerseys. Love those Quebec Nordique jerseys from the day. And I love when the Avalanche do their throwback jerseys and they do it with the Avalanche logo, but with the color scheme and the layout of the old Quebec Nordique sweaters. Oh, love it. So yeah, so one person thinks these Centennial jerseys are terrible because they look like the Nordiques. I think they're great, partially for that reason. I love the color. Anyway, that's my take. So if you want to send me one, give you my address, you can send it along. I'll take it. I'll wear it. I'll wear it on the podcast. I know the Rangers aren't giving away anything for free. So anyway, so that's where we're at. The first week into the Rangers centennial season. I think it's going to come together. Take a deep breath. We'll be with you to really explore this entire journey together right here on the Rink Rap podcast and at foreverblueshirts.com. Thanks for being a part of our family, and stay with us. We'll see you again next week when Ryan Paton from NHL Network Radio joins us on the podcast. Cheers.